Hello guys, today we are going to talk about how to avoid spaghetti code in our application. So spaghetti code is just messy codes that we often do, and it just putting all our code in some chunk or making our code irreadable, unreadable for other people or even sometimes for us. So this is really like something that is really common for to everyone, and me myself I've been writing spaghetti code for about more than a year. So it's just some months ago that I actually learned how to avoid that. So I just wanted to share some of the things that work for me to avoid writing spaghetti code whenever I'm writing an application. So to do so, we are going to dive into an application I've actually written in Java. We are not really going to write code, but I'm rather going to explain to you the code and explain how the architecture of the application works, so that maybe you can learn from it and have implement something similar in our application. So the application is mainly MVC based. So we are having um, our main our main Java class, and our main Java class just invokes a new class that I've created, which is mainframe. So we are having our public main, and then we're having our function main, and then I invoke between utility I invoke a new runnable. So the runnable will kinda run a new run the code in a separate thread if I'm not mistaken, and then I implement my void run inside my runnable because it's an interface, and then there I call my mainframe code. So it's a little bit tricky. I'm doing so because I want to have to avoid memory issues when running my application, and it's because it's the standard to run swing application in this way. You first use the swing utilities and you invoke later, then you implement a new runnable and override the voids the run method inside the runnable. So that's pretty much it. Okay, so let's dive into our mainframe. So here we call a new mainframe. So let's dive into actually what our mainframe is made up of. So our mainframe will be the container where most of our view lodges. When I mean view, so application is an application which can register users, and it can log in users, and also it has like a profile view. So for each of its functions is having a different view. So um I've created a class for each views. Okay, so I'm having a public class mainframe, and then for each class you can see I have a different panel. So I'm having login panel, which is another a class by its own, register, view, profile panel. So a small advice I will give you here is that whenever you have codes, or you have a data abstraction that you want to um, that actually has the same kind of function, you can either use a super class and you just extend to it. But since in this our code they don't really resemble themselves, like the login view will have like different inputs and other like to the register view. I did not want to do that. So to do that, instead of creating um pop panels each time like creating my panels directly to my mainframe, I created a class which extends a panel. So for each of them, if you can see, I'll just go over here. You can see my login view is a class which extends a G panel. Same thing for my register view and my profile view. Okay, so I have my three classes which extend my tree panel, and then I'm having another private class db which gets my db, and db is just a custom class that I've created in order to be able to connect to my database. So it's not really that fancy, but it's just like a collection of methods that I can use to connect to my database, like to log in, um, and it returns me like the user which is logged in, or to update maybe information about my database. So I'm using this like as a controller for my database. So I'm using it as like a remote controller, I can say. Like it's the remote controller to my database. So I created a class which will serve as a remote controller for my database. So it's all about what MVC is about. MVC stands from model view controller. So in our MVC architecture, we are having one controller which will be the DB controller, and it will be control our database. And we're having views. You can see models. I mean, we are having different views. So you can see we are having a G panel, a rec panel, and a profile panel, which are different views because they are actually things we say directly. And we're having a model. Our model here will just be our mainframe. So it's the the thing which connects the view and the controller, if I'm not mistaken, I can say so. So our model will just be like the general background of everything. So okay, hopefully you got it. Okay, so now that we've basically talked about the variable, I declare a parent string which is for my connected user in case I connect, and then since I have extended the gframe, I can just use call super. Like super will call the constructor of the super class on which it extends upon. Like since I extend gframe, it's just like I am calling the constructor of the gframe, and calling the constructor of the gframe with a string sets the title of the frame. So if I run my code here, you can just see that the title of my frame is app. Okay, and then once I do that, I don't need to actually say like gframe.setVisible. I just say set visible. So I set visible to true. My frame is now visible. I set my size to 500 by 600. So you can see you have seen the dimension, and then I can start initializing my different private variables or my private attributes. So I'm having my db equals to new db, login view equals to new login panel, register view equals to new register panel, and my profile view equals to new profile panel. Okay, and then here it gets a little bit tricky. So I have a controller for each of my views because I want to actually be able to separate my mainframe code from my views code. So how do I do that? I do that by implementing a controller. So a controller is actually an interface in my code. So you can see public interface controller, and then I'm having some different attributes. So I'm having my string name, my string class that is passed on to my login action, then I'm having a register action, and then I'm having a subs action, and then a pick action. So we'll be talking about all of those in my code as I'm going to go over it. But bear in mind just that we're having an interface controller, so we can definitely use our interface controller. So one thing to note is that each of my panel have a property which is add controller. So if I go here, you can see I'm having a property somewhere in my code, add controller. I'm having a property also here in my code, add controller. Same thing for my profile panel, add controller. So this helps like to be able to set a controller in case maybe I click my submit button. I can just send my information through my controller, so that hopefully they like I can send my information through my controller, so that hopefully the login view knows what to, I mean, the model knows what to do. That is, the mainframe knows what to do with that information. So it helps to separate code. Okay. So I'm having add controller, then I just randomly implement a new controller, and then I'm having a public, I override the void register action, so I can get string name, string pass, string email, and occupation. So all this code gets sent to my register view. Okay, my register view is a reg panel. So to my reg panel, this code gets sent here. So I take at control, I take a controller and I set C to my controller. So here I'm having some variables, I'm having labels, I'm having text field, and then I'm having a controller. Okay, I implemented a controller in my view, so that I can use it at any moment in time in case I need to talk to my model. So I'm having a controller, and then my add controller will set my controller to the to some kind of controller that I've already created here. Okay, why do I do so? Why I'm doing so? It's because if I want to, let's say I want to register a user, or um I want to subscribe, or I don't know, want to register or submit uh my inputs. So what I do is I get a new action listener here, and then I have my action perform, and then I can get my different values. I can get my name from my name field, I can get my password from my password field, and then I can just say, okay, see the login action into my name and my password. And if you can see here, I'm having, when I implemented my controller, I had a um, register action, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm also having, let me check it out. In my rec panel, I should have a login action. So no, I'm sorry. So in my rec panel, I'm having instead a register action. Okay, so I'm having a register action which I call here. So instead I call register action and not login action. So when I call my register action, it's this code here that gets executed, this code inside this void that I implemented. So okay, I know it's really difficult to get your head around, especially when I'm explaining like this to you. But basically, I'm having a controller, and each time I want my model to interface um, my view. I just call my controller. I just use my controller. So what I do is I have a controller and I implement a controller for each of my views. And then my controller gets passed as argument in as the controller of my view. So it gets passed as argument and it gets set into the control of my view. So that each time a user clicks a button, I can just call a void inside my control. I can just call login action, for example, and the login action will just execute whatsoever code I've written here. So this is how like we you can it's difficult to understand, but this is how you can really like separate your code from um, and avoid spaghetti codes inside your applications. This is definitely one way. um, I will consider using it since it's at the same time difficult, but it's really practical and really useful to do like that, because you are now just controlling everything via your controller and not having to control inside one, I don't know, one method only. So you are using an interface just to control, to swap the I mean to transfer data from your view to your model and do some action. So I did the same with my profile view. So I'm having add control in my profile view, and then I'm having pick action. Pick action will be here for to update the picture of my user. So you can see my pick action, and then I have a string path that get returned to me. So it will be the path of the picture I have selected, and then I can say my db.update picture, and then I have my connected user and my path. So for um my login panel or my login view, I can just um I am sure this is supposed to be login view. Nevertheless, for my login view, um I'm having an add controller and I add my new controller. Then login action will be uh string logged in, and then I'll just use my db.get user with my name and my password. So my login action will return the name and the password in my text fields, and then I'll use it to check my db using my db controller I implemented here, and a small prepare statement inside it that would actually check my user. So I have a query statement, and that's the query statement which actually checks the user and returns it back here. So I have a string logged in, and I verify if the logged in string is equals to the length of the login string is equal to 0. So if it's equals to 0, that means no username or password has been found, or no account has been found with that username and password. So incorrect username or password, I just show a dialog with that. Else I can just create an array, and then I split my string, and my string contains every information about my user. It contains its username, it contains its ID, and it contains all like its password and all the like, its occupation, its password, its username, its ID, and then it just contains all this of information with spaces like username space, password space, email space, and so I just have to split this and just set I have to split it and set it to my array. Then my connected user will be array at the index 0. Array at the index 0 in my case will be the ID of my user. So when I am updating my picture, I'm actually updating using the ID of my connected user and the path. So I'm not using the name because the name can be the same for many users. So I want uniqueness in my code. That's why I'm using connected user. So now I'm having profile view, and then to my profile view I have in a method called set information. So set info will just like display uh, the information about my user. So I can say set info, this will be the name, then occupation, and then let me just check it out. So profile, if I go to profile panel and we go to set info, so we're having name, email, occupation, and path. Path will be like the variable, will be the path of the current. It will The path will be the path of uh the current picture, profile picture he's having. So if it's the case, I just implement it here. If it's not, I just do not add it. So um that's pretty much it about the code. So I'm going to run it, and as I'm running it, I'm going to try to explain to you what happens. So let's run it. Okay, so me running it, I'm having my login view. So why I'm having my login view is because I set, although I added all my views to my main frame, all of the views are set to invisible. So the only view that is set to visible is my login view. So that's why I'm seeing my login view. So you can see the beginning, um, we have set visible true, then my reg action, let me check it out. Okay, so what I meant is the only view that is added is my login view instead. I'm sorry. So the only view that is added is my login view. So that's why you can see the login view here and not the others. And then as it goes, I just add other views and then set the others to invisible. So if I go to create account and I create a new account, I get to my register view, and my register view is just some labels, occupation, and email. So this will allow me to connect to create a password, a new account. So when I click to my register button, what happens is that my this code, no, this code gets executed. So this code, my subs action will get executed in my login panel. Whenever I click the reg button, so when I click the reg button, I call subs action, and subs action will be this code, and the subs action will just um, set the login view to false, set the login view to invisible, and then add the register view. So that's why we are having this code. So if I create a new account, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then let's say software engineer, and then let's say email at email.com, and I submit. So I get back to my login view. How is it possible? In my register view, whenever I click on my when I submit, I call the register action, and the register action has been implemented somewhere up here. The register action is here. So it takes a name. So in my register view, I get my name, I get my password, my email, and my occupation. That is all the information I've already written previously, and then I call this register action of my controller with these parameters. So when it gets here, it just adds a user using all these information, and then if it's added, so this add user returns a boolean. If it's added, then I set my register view to false and I set my login view to true. So I kind of switch view. So I set my register view becomes invisible once more and my login view becomes visible. Else I have to show a dialog, so I have to show like the account could not be connected and an error message. So that's why I'm getting back my login view in my equation. So if I actually use my account and then 1 2 3 4 5 um 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and then I submit, I get to my profile view. Okay, and then if I submit, I get to my profile view. So when I submit, what happens? When I submit, I'm having a sub action, and then I use my login action. I remember my login action will do what? My login action comes here. My login action comes here and just gets a user with which has a name, the same name and password as what I've typed, and then sets the information to my profile panel. My profile panel gets the information. So once I've gotten my user all this, I set the information to my user panel, and once my user panel gets the information, it tries to parse it, and it sets the um the labels, like my label L will now become name plus the name of what I've put in as variable, email plus the email of what I've put it as variable, and occupation, and so forth. So then I remove every component that is already in my panel, and I add now the new components with the new values. So that's why I'm getting this view with my name and then my name, my email, then my email, and my occupation. So that's pretty much how it works. And then if I call my change profile picture, my change profile picture will now be a file chooser. So my profile panel, you can see I'm having a G file chooser, and then when I call my button, when I click on my button, I use my file chooser to choose a file. So I say if file chooser that show operation equals to profile panel, show operation to profile panel, that this, so show I'm sorry, if file chooser dot show open dialog, open dialog will be whether the dialog succeeded to open, and it takes as parameter the frame in which it is in. So for the frame in which it is in, it will be the profile panel frame, and then equals to G file chooser dot approve. So if I actually select, if this pops and I selected a file, then I will say, okay, I want the part of the file. Then the part of the file will just be file chooser dot get selected file. So get selected file will just get the file data type, that is the file class of the file that has been selected, and I use toString to just change it to a path, and then I use that path to create a new image icon and set whatsoever my icon image was to that new image icon. Okay, so If I do this and I choose the 3dcup.png and I open, you can see immediately I get this. And in my database, this also has been changed. So if I go to uh, localhost and I go to uh, php my admin, um, uh, I am supposed to get. So if I go to php my admin using my localhost, I am supposed to get to my database. So I have my database will be the profile database, and if I go to users, you can now see that I'm having a new user, the tricks with its password, its username, occupation, and then my picture is here. So it's updated my picture. Okay, so that's pretty much it about my code. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and you've learned something about how to write, to avoid spaghetti code and write really tough applications which are easy to read. I mean, more easy to read than normal applications. And thank you for listening and for viewing. Thank you very much. Have a good day.